Hello, dear viewers. Welcome to Wild Werewolf. Are you ready to embark on a wild and thrilling journey into the world of werewolves? Here, we'll explore the untamed nature, the raw power, and the captivating stories of these mythical creatures. So, get comfortable and let's unleash the wildness together. Werewolf Forest Chapter 7. Hey everybody. Okay, so, for those of you who didn't get the message, who wants to be in my story? Well, you see, I'm going to have some new characters coming in and I can't for the life of me think of names and appearances. I have some of their personas but only enough to fill their roles. So I decided it might be fun to have some of you guys in my story. Send me your name. To your appearance, 3 a little bit about yourself and I can turn you into a character in my story. I'll put the winner's usernames at the top of the chapter with the character beside it. Sound good? Oh, and if you want to submit info but not of your name on the chapter, that's cool. Just let me know and I won't put your name in there, okay? Sound good to everybody? Alright. Now, you guys reached my vote goal in a week. Actually, I think it was less than a week. But anyway, moving on. I was thinking we could go for, say, 25 votes on this chapter beforehand. March 25th. Easy to remember. That's 10 days, people. If you don't reach it in time, well, I might just be so discouraged. It might take me longer to upload. Well, we'll find out soon enough, right? I grabbed another piece of meat from the metal tray and shoved it in my mouth. It had now been exactly 23 days since I came here. 23 days. 23 days of confusion. 23 days of pain yet happiness. I chewed the meat slowly, thinking deeply. Ever since Danny had taken my collar off, I had been debating the whole running away issue. If I ran away, where would I go? I couldn't go home. I would never go back to my father. Where else could I go? I had no money, no other family. In truth, I had nowhere to go. Maybe I could live in the forest. I could hunt for my food and sleep under the stars. But what kind of life was that? Living alone in the forest. No, I couldn't do that. As much as I loved my old time-lone adventures to the forest, I couldn't be alone for the rest of my life. But I can't stay here. I mean, they kidnapped me for Christ's sake. And one of them beat the crap out of me. I'm miserable here. Yeah, but is it of your own making? Marek Spidey. Why faded Nate. White splashed around me and my wind spun with the beat of the heavy techno music the DJ was playing. Well, let's think about this for a second. They've been pretty nice to you since you've been all yes sir and of course sir. Maybe, just maybe, we could be happy here. If we just follow orders and keep our head down, we could live here. Maybe it wouldn't be so bad. After all, we do have Jason. I couldn't dispute that. Maybe it was my fault. Maybe, if I just behaved, I could live here and be happy. Just maybe. Jason was so nice and sweet. Maybe I could have a life here. With him. I looked to my side where Jason was sitting. He was gulping down food, not noticing me staring. Maybe, just maybe. Jason and I were sitting in the camp, playing Moncala with holes dug in the earth and stones we had found lying around. It was Jason's turn and he was taking forever, so I leaned back on my hands and looked around the camp. I frowned when I noticed something. Hey Jason, yeah? He answered, not looking up from the make-shift game board. Are there any other girls in this camp? I continued to look around, seeing boy after shirtless boy sitting or eating or talking amongst one another, but not one girl. Why hadn't I noticed before? He looked up from the game. No, he answered simply. Why not? I pressed. He looked down again, seeming to deliberate his answer. He then looked up with a smirk. Not all girls can be as tough as you. And as you've probably gathered, you need to be to live with us. There was a double meaning in his words, even though he had probably not meant it. I needed to be tough to live with them. I needed to be tough to survive with them. I decided not to press the matter further. For that moment anyway. Hours passed before I was called to training. Jason, run her through some advanced combat training. She has excelled enough in the basics, it's time she moved up. I felt an odd sense of pride as Danny said this. Jason nodded. Spar with her a bit. Give her a taste of what a battle is like. Danny turned back towards the camp and left us in the clearing. Jason turned to me with a smile. You ready? He asked Barry. I answered, grinning. Don't worry, I'll go easy on you. He smirked. I think I'm the one that needs to go easy on you. We'll see about that. Jason phased into his wolf form. He was bigger than me but much smaller than Gage, about the size of a bear. The fur on his back was an ashen gray that faded into lighter silver near his stomach. He had some black streaks on his face and a white line that ran from the tip of his muzzle to the back of his head. He bent down on his front paws and wagged his tail at me, the way a dog does when it wants to play. I shifted into my wolf form along with him and got into the playful position too. I growled at him, raising the challenge to begin the fight. We circled each other, never breaking eye contact. We met in the middle of the clearing in a frenzy of claws and teeth. I had my paws on his shoulders and he had his teeth around my scruff. He shook his head violently, jerking my neck from side to side. I bucked backwards, dragging him with me. We flipped over and were now on our feet again. I jumped at him and landed on his back. I sunk my teeth into his scruff and held on for dear life. He shook and spun, trying to shake me off. I held tight, though trying not to break the skin. He eventually bucked me off his back and I landed hard on my side. I rolled over on my feet, but I wasn't prepared for him barreling into me. I was now on the ground, struggling, with his weight on top of me. He was smirking a wolfy grin, knowing he had won. Then I remembered a trick I had seen in a movie one time and went completely limp. I closed my eyes and barely breathed. I heard Jason make a whining noise and he began to back off. Sucker. Once he had let go of his hold on me, I rolled, knocking his feet out from under him. I jumped on at his back and used what weight I had to keep him down. He struggled, but he couldn't get up. I let a mutilated chuckle rumble through my chest. He stopped struggling and was breathing hard. He barked the surrendering signal and I let it go of him. I backed away slightly and phased back into my human form. I couldn't help the giddy smile that was plastered on my face. Jason, still lying on the ground, phased back too. You tricked me, he said. Yeah, that was the general idea. Where did you learn to fight like that? I looked down, recalling the memories. I used to live in a bad part of town. I took fighting lessons from a local street gang that my friend was a part of. Thinking about and sent a fresh wave of pain through my heart. It had been over a year, but the wound was still there. They were in the bad kind of gang, though. Not the ones who kill people for drugs. They helped people like me. Helped defend people against the bad kind of gangs. I remembered it all clearly. The lessons in the back alley with Kyle, the leader of the gang, or the freedom fighters, as they like to call themselves, and Andrew. Learning how to fight with knives, martial arts, how to look for an opponent's weaknesses, how to take a weapon from an attacker. Survival 101 where we lived. Seeing Andrew's face in my memories, those big emerald green eyes with the blue flecks, that chocolate brown hair that anyone would be jealous of, that smile that could turn a funeral into a carnival. I smiled, remembering him. God, I miss those days. Well, anyway, he said, getting up and dusting himself off. Ready for another round? Hell yeah. I cheered, welcoming anything to get my mind of its current path. We shifted back and began our fight again. Hours later, the score was Jason 5-4. I slammed him into the ground, winning my 5th round. We shifted back into our human forms, breathing hard. Any wounds we may have had from fighting were reduced to scrapes now. It was now beginning to darken, the sun falling behind the tree-covered hills. We're tied. We can call it a draw if you're tired. I wiggled my eyebrows at him. Never, he yelled. He charged at me, trying to grab my waist. I jumped into the air to avoid him, but I didn't come back down. I just kept going up and up and up. My feet dangled below me, at least 10 feet off the ground. I could see Jason looking up at me in astonishment, his mouth hanging open. I was flapping my arms frantically, but I just kept going higher and higher. Then I realized something. Those weren't my arms flapping. I looked to my sides and saw a good 6 feet span of white feathers protruding from my back. I have wings, I screamed. Okay, now, I know what you guys are thinking. What the hell? Right. Am I right? Well, all will be explained in due time. Just be patient. It will all make sense later. Trust me. Don't forget to vote and comment. Werewolf Forest, Chapter 8. I stopped moving my arms. Air, wings, and dropped like a rock. I slammed into the hard, stony ground with a force that probably would have killed a human, but would only give me some really bad bruises. I stood up and spun around like a dog chasing its tail, trying to get a better look at the wings. Jason was still staring at me with wide eyes. I lifted my arm and stared under it at the wing. It was longer than I was tall, at least 6 feet, and white as new fallen snow. There were black wavy lines breaking the snowy background, swirling around the bottom edge like vines. First I turned into a giant dog, and now this. I screamed in my head. I ripped my gaze away from my wing and turned my attention to Jason. His mouth was still gaping as his eyes bolted from one wing to the other. Care to explain this? I waved my hands frantically at my new feathery appendages. Jason stuttered. He swallowed, then answered calmly. I think this is something Danny should explain. Oh bull, I was cut off by him dragging me towards the camp. He stopped and looked back at me. How do you think you could? Retract those. He pointed to my wings. I used my newfound muscles to pull my wings in. They folded closely to my back, only creating a small bump. He yanked on my hand and pulled me toward the camp again. We ran as fast as possible to Danny's tent, hoping no one would notice the 2-6-foot, feathered monstrosities hugging to my back. We reached Danny's tent and burst through the flaps, not bothering to announce ourselves. Jason. Maggie. Danny looked up from the map he was looking at and gazed at us with a confused expression. When he caught sight of our panicked expressions, his face hardened, turning into one of concern and seriousness. What's wrong? Jason looked over at me and nodded his head sideways, indicating for me to show Annie. I let my wings relax and stretch out. It felt good to release the muscles from their tension, like putting down a heavy backpack and rolling out your sore shoulders. I let them extend as far as they could without hitting the canvas walls of the tent. Danny's face was one of shock for a brief moment before it turned to one of understanding. He sighed as he looked down and nodded to himself. Maggie, you might want to sit down. He sat cross-legged, Jason and I following, settling down on the cool dirt floor. I shifted my shoulders sideways and accidentally smacked Jason in the back of the head with one giant wing. Hey, he exclaimed, grabbing the back of his head. Sorry, I muttered, turning the other way. I felt my feathers brush against something before I heard it crash to the ground. I cringed at the smashing of something delicate. Sorry, I repeated. It's all right. Danny waved his hand dismissively. To get rid of the wings, just phase into your human form. Like normal, huh? As if you can call any of this normal. I mentally rolled my eyes. I did as he said and felt my wings seemingly melt into my body. I shuddered and rolled my now light, feeling shoulders. Danny took a deep, steadying breath before explaining. You see, Maggie, you are another species of werewolf. This species has had many names. Omnimodusums or universal body. Deus bestia, or god of beast. The most common used is Amoveo Deus, or shifting god, or in your case, Amoveo, shifting goddess. This other species is identified by a mark on their fur. The symbol is different for every individual, but always looks unnatural, like a tattoo. The image of my face with the odd black marking around my flashed to my mind. Amoveos are created by a mutation in the werewolf gene. There's no way to predict it, and we aren't sure why it occurs. They are very rare. For every one Amoveo born, there are 500, 0 normal werewolves born. They can turn into more than just wolves. Often you will get the whole animal, but normally only with mammals. Most of the time you only get parts of birds, reptiles, and so on, like your wings. Like you experienced in the training field, the transformations come randomly. We don't know when the new transformations will occur or how many different creatures you will take form of. Sometimes an Amoveo can acquire different powers as well, but they are just as unpredictable as the transformations. Amoveos are very powerful. You will be put into new training regimen to enhance that power. There is a separate camp not far from here. I am sending you there for a while. He said those words as if they cleared everything up. Well, yes, it did clear up some things. It was far from helping me understand. Isn't it bad enough that they turned me into a freaking werewolf? Now I'm this. Amoveo, whatever thing. Doesn't my life suck enough? Can you stop it with the wallowing in self-pity? It's getting on my nerves. Oh, shut up. You just told yourself to. Must we go through this again? Whatever. But what I don't get is, why isn't he happy about this? I mean, you'd think that having a powerful mutant in your pack would be a good thing. He looked worried. I looked up at Danny and his face was scrunched in a grimace. He did look worried. Ugh. You will be escorted to the other camp to meet your teacher there, Danny said, interrupting my thoughts. Sir, began Jason. Yes, I request permission to accompany her in her training. He said in an official tone, like a corporal speaking to a general hum. Well, I don't see why not. I don't need you here for much. All right, you may accompany her, but you will follow James's orders to the letter should he give them to you. Understood. Yes, sir. And you as well, Maggie. Though I didn't know who James was. I obliged. Yes, sir. All right. You can head out tomorrow morning. You are dismissed. I was still absorbing the information Danny had given me. So I was a mutant of mutants. Great. We made our way to my tent and sat. How long? I asked. What? How long did you know about this? I didn't. I gave him the don't BS me look. Well, we weren't sure. We thought so, but... Danny was kinda hoping not. Why not? The way he described it, I could be a valuable pack member. Yes, but Amoveos tend to be rebellious, especially after their first change. They don't like confinement. Most of them are nomads and hold contempt to those who live in normal packs. An Amoveo that was not on our team, so to speak, could be bad, very bad. And you being, well, he's worried. Oh, was all I could say. Who does James? And why does he live separately from the rest of us? I think he should explain that himself. We'll head out tomorrow morning. He got up to leave. Jason, I said in a tell me now or I'll rip your head off tone. He stopped and half-turned to me. I'll see you tomorrow, Maggie. He quickly stepped out of the tent. Jason, I called. No answer. Jason, still nothing. I sighed and fell back. I crawled to the mass of blankets and curled up. I let my eyelids fall over my tired eyes. That night I dreamed of the wind under my wings as they carried me higher and higher into the skies. Maggie, wake up. Jason was shaking my shoulder. What? I groaned. Come on, we're leaving now. Leaving for where? James's camp. Oh, right. I sat up still groggy with sleep, my mouth stretched in a yawn. Come on, Sleeping Beauty. Let's go. He grabbed my arm and pulled me to my feet. All right. I'm coming, mister. Impatient. He rolled his eyes and walked out of the tent. The sun was just beginning to creep over the horizon as we set off through the woods. We had been traveling for 2 hours straight and I was getting cranky with lack of sleep and food. Jason. Yeah, are we there yet? No, how about now? No, now. No, now. No, Maggie. He sounded like he was staring a bit irritated. I stayed silent as I counted to 10. How about now? No, geez, Maggie. We aren't there yet. He whirled on me and threw his hands in the air. Okay. I said, putting my hands up. Palms toward him. No need to freak out, it was just a question. He turned back around and we kept walking. I decided to pass the time with a little fun. 99 bottles of beer in the wall. 99 bottles of beer. I sang inside my head, because I was afraid if I sang it out loud, Jason would murder me. I know a song that gets on everybody's nerves, hey. Wrong, annoying song. Genius. I'll sing my song, you sing yours. Oh, fine. Take one down, pass it around, 98 bottles of beer in the wall. Everybody's nerves. 98 bottles of beer on the wall. I know a song that gets on everybody's nerves. 98 bottles of beer. And this is how it goes. Take one down, pass it around. I know a song that gets on everybody's nerves. 97 bottles of beer on the wall. Everybody's nerves. And so it continued until I reached 14 bottles of beer. Jason stopped dead in his tracks. Ouch. I said as my nose smashed into his back. We're here, he said. I looked out from behind his back and was met with a small clearing, about the size of our training field. Tick and the stunts were grouped together on one side. A man was standing by one of them, staring straight at us. He was tall, taller than Jason, with the same tanned skin. He somehow seemed older than the rest of them. He looked to be in his early 30s. His dirty blonde hair was long enough that some of it hung in his dark, almost black eyes. He was shirtless just like the rest of the guys back at the camp, and he wore a pair of cut-off jeans. His feet were bare as well. His face was blank of all emotion. Jason, he said in a deep, rough voice. James, Jason replied. And this must be Maggie. He turned his head to look at me. His face remained blank. In fact, he looked rather bored. I nodded my head. Well, come on then. Don't just stand there. He walked to the middle of the clearing. I walked toward him and Jason tried to follow. Jason, you will not be needed at the moment. Wait there, James said, not taking his cold gaze off of me. No, I'm coming with her, Jason continued. James's bored expression became one of anger. His head snapped to Jason. No, you will not. James raised his hand toward Jason, palm outstretched. Then, faster than I could blink, Jason flew backwards as if a bull had just rammed him in the chest. His back slammed into a tree. James lowered his hand and returned to his bored countenance. My head whipped from Jason, laying in the brush, to James and back again. Did you do that? I asked James, pointing toward Jason. They did not tell you. James asked with a confused expression. Tell me what? I am an Amoveo Deus. Like you. Max by faded mate. What splashed away on me and my one spun with the beat of the heavy techno music the DJ was playing. I asked wide-eyed. I thought they would have informed you of that. I didn't bother to pay attention to his last statement as I ran to help Jason. Are you all right? I asked him. Yeah, just peachy. He winced in pain as I grabbed his hand and helped him up. I turned back to James, anger making my heart beat like a hummingbird's wings. What the hell was that for? I screamed at him. He was being disrespectful. I do not tolerate that. I would suggest shutting your mouth, young one, for you are well on your way. His voice was calm, yet threatening. The hell I am. Yeah, I'm an idiot. Suddenly, I lost all control of my body. My limbs went limp, my brain could no longer control them. I was raised from the ground by some unseen force, and pulled forward until I was face with James. His hand was raised, calm face toward me. Yes, he spat, venom coating his words. His eyes were glowing with anger. You are actually. I do not take kindly to disrespect, so from now on you will refer to me as sir. I am your superior and you will obey any command I should happen to give you without hesitation. Am I clear? I stayed silent, fear making my stomach turn. He jerked me closer to him, our noses only inches apart. He narrowed his eyes. Am clear. He said each word slowly, practically growling. As much as I was scared in that moment, I was twice as pissed off. That was Spidey, my fated mate. Lights flashed around me and the room spun with the beat of the heavy techno music the DJ was playing. At the moment, there wasn't much I could do about that fact. Crystal, I sneered. Crystal what? He bared his teeth slightly. Crystal, sir, I said, though gritted teeth. I have to ask, what is it with these guys and their obsession with being called sir? No clue, but it's really starting to get on my nerves. He released his hold on me and let me fall to the ground with a thump. I pushed myself up, ready for anything he threw at me. Now, he said, hands folded behind his back. In order for me to teach you, I must know what you have already learned. He lunged at me, fist outstretched. I dodged his punch and crouched down, trying to knock his feet out from under him. He simply jumped over my leg like a small child playing jump rope. I sprung back up and tried to get my bearings, but I wasn't fast enough. He placed one hand on my forehead and pushed while putting one foot behind my legs. I, now unbalanced, fell backwards. He placed one dirt-covered foot on my chest and looked down at me. You have much to learn, he mumbled almost to himself. Yes, much to learn. 30 days had passed since I was sent to James's camp, and 53 days since I had woken up a werewolf. The days had slowly begun to shorten, and the winds blew slightly cooler. Then again, everything seemed cooler after the scorching heat of July. I had a careful count of scratches under my blankets. The day I arrived there, I took a rock and made 23 scratches, to mark the days that had already passed, then added one for each day after. Shifting my surroundings again was disorienting to me. I had lived in one house my entire 16 years of life. Now I had been removed from that house, sent to one camp, and now I was at another. The change in the surrounding people, though an upgrade from my father, wasn't so great either. James was one cocky ass, OB. He was most definitely the most powerful person I had ever met, so maybe the cockiness was justified. Aside from the telekinesis, he could turn into a bear, a gorilla, and a hyena, and he had wings like me. He could take complete control of your body, make you do anything he wanted you to do, say anything he wanted you to say. He could fight to no end. No matter how well I could fight, how much he taught me, I still couldn't last more than 30 seconds with him. I bet Danny was glad James was on his side, because whoever was on the opposing team was in for a lot of trouble. He always expected me to be perfect, working me until I almost collapsed from exhaustion. Then, even after I had done my best, worked my hardest, he gave me that bored expression that he always wore and just shook his head. I was never enough to impress him. Then again, compared to him, I was the most unimpressive thing this side of the river. I tried, though. God knows I tried. Every day I woke up before the sun did. James took me for a 15-mile run away, then a flight back. He then took me hunting. I was only allowed to eat what I killed, so if I killed nothing that day, I ate nothing that day. I felt horrible for each deer I killed, each bear, each wild cat, each squirrel and rabbit butt. I had no choice. We then went to a small clearing and had combat training until it got dark. He taught me how to fight in the air as well as on the ground. I could now put any martial arts master to shame, though I still couldn't beat James. I would then be allowed to spend some time, one short measly hour, with Jason before he sent me to bed. Though Jason and I would often stay up and talk after James was asleep. Jason and I were as close as siblings now. We talked about almost everything. Though I tried to not bring up his past. For what I did, his face would flush red and he looked close to tears. That's Spidey, my fated mate. Lights flashed around me and my world spun with the beat of the heavy techno music the DJ was playing. One time, I got him to talk a little. He told me that his parents died in a car crash when he was only 4. He went through foster home after miserable foster home until finally, when he was 14, he ran away. Daddy had found him wandering the forest alone and offered him a family. He agreed. That was 5 years ago and he had with them ever since. I never could get anything from him about the girl and the incident Danny had mentioned. I hinted, asking him what happened in those 5 years, asking him about other girls in the camp. I never did get a straight answer. I told him all about my life. How 3 years ago, when I was 13, my mom died. About my horrible pig of a father. About Kyle, Andrew, and the freedom fighters. How the FF disappeared just 2 months after Andrew did. We were sitting in our tent. The hour was late, and James was fast asleep by now. The moonlight was glowing through the tent flaps, throwing shadows everywhere. I was silent after my explanation of my life. I felt an aching pain in my chest, like something was squeezing my heart. So, did they ever find out what happened to him? He asked, breaking the silence. No, I answered. Not one clue. No ransom call. No. Body. My voice broke on that last word. He just disappeared off the face of the earth. I hugged my knees to my chest, trying to keep the tears from falling. He put his arm around my shoulders, holding me close. I buried my face in his bare chest. I tried to keep the tears back, but they had other ideas. My shoulders heaved in sobs while the tears streamed down my face. It's okay. He comforted me. I'm right here. I've got you. Eventually the sobs ceased and I raised my head. His bare, muscular chest was gleaming with my tears. Sorry, I said, wiping my eyes. Don't be, he said. It's late. Go to sleep. Maggie. I nodded and lowered myself onto my blanket mattress. Oh, wait, I thought. I sat up and grabbed my rock. I flicked the blankets back, revealing my captivity calendar as I like to call it. I scratched one more line in the dirt for the day. Day 53. Tomorrow I would draw another for day 54. Then 55, 56, 57, 58. When would my calendar end? Would it ever? I looked over at Jason's now sleeping face. His blonde hair, now long enough to brush the top of his ears, was disheveled in an attractive way. His face was relaxed, his full pink lips parted slightly. His chest was rising in an even rhythmic pattern. He looked so innocent, so young, so peaceful. I was dazed for a moment before I composed myself and laid on my bed. I shut my eyes and let my flooded, confused mind fall into darkness. I admit, not the best thing I've ever written, but it had some important information in it, so yeah. Sorry for the sucky chapter. Alex Werewolf Forest, Chapter 9. We will be visiting the main camp today. James informed us after our morning run. Danny is expecting a progress report. Jason and I followed behind James as we walked back through the trees to the camp. Some while later, I began to get bored. I spy with my little eye something. It's a tree awe. How'd you guess? 1. All we can see is trees. 2. I can hear your thoughts. True. Damn. 99 bottles of beer in the wall. We already did that one. Fine. Miss Picky. It's a world of laughter, a world of tears. Found a peanut last night. It's a world of hopes and a world of fears. Last night I found a peanut. Found a peanut last night. There's so much that we share that it's time we're aware. A few hours and a few hundred verses of 2 of the most annoying songs ever later. We reached the camp. All eyes turned to our small party, headed by James, as we made our way to Danny's tent. Danny, Gage, and 2 other guys were sitting in a circle, bent over some sort of map. Danny, hearing us enter, raised his head and smiled. Well, hello there, James. It's good to see you again. Danny offered his hand for James to shake. James grabbed his hand. Likewise, he said in his bored monotone. Maggie, I hope your training has been going well, Danny said, turning to me. Oh, yes. I just love getting up before sunrise and going for ridiculously long runs, killing innocent animals, and then having Captain Cocky over there kick my ass in the training field. Yeah, training is going just perfect. I kept that little retort to myself and replied, Yes, sir. Like the good little soldier that I am. Good. I need to speak to James for a moment. It was more of a command than a statement. We all left the tent, Gage and the other 2 guys going one way, Jason and I, another. Jason and I were walking side by side through the camp. The sun was in the last stretch of its descent back towards the horizon, casting dark, elongated versions of our walking figures on the dirt. The late afternoon air was thick with the mixed melodies of songbirds and crickets. It was that moment in a day where the animals changed shifts of making nature's music from the daylight to the night. We entered my old tent and sat on the dirt floor. So, you think I passed? I asked, half joking. With flying colors, Jason replied, laughing. Do you think I can leave boot camp now? He scooted next to me and put one arm around my shoulders. Let's hope. Maggie. We sat in silence for what could have been hours or minutes. I still hadn't got used to the strange way time works around here. The sky was now completely dark, though I could still see perfectly, as could any of us. Maggie. Jason turned to me and brushed his hand along my jawline. He began to lean closer, his warm breath tickling my nose. I sat there, unable to move or speak, as his hand that wasn't caressing my face found its way around my waist. A shudder traveled down my spine as his fingers met my bare back. His hand curled around my neck and he pulled my face closer to his. He shut his eyes and brushed his nose against mine. I didn't know how to react. Should I respond? Should I reject him? I barely had time to think before he crashed his lips against mine. Our lips moved in sync as he pressed his body closer to mine. He put one hand on my back and lowered me onto the ground. He put a hand on either side of my head and kept most of his weight off me. The kiss was sweet. But it was so non-sparky. Weren't you supposed to feel sparks when you kiss someone? Like fireworks going off inside you. I felt nothing. His tongue traced my lower lip and I decided that it had gone far enough. Jason. I sat against his lips. I placed one hand on his chest and tired to push him away. He didn't stop. His lips just migrated to my neck. Jason, stop. I said seriously, pushing on his chest harder. He continued kissing my neck, ignoring me completely. Jason, stop. I said louder. I began to squirm under him. He grabbed both of my hands in one of his and pinned them to my sides. Jason, oh, come on. I know you want me, babe. He mumbled against my neck. Panic began to rush through my veins. I opened my mouth to scream, but he silenced me by crashing his lips against mine once more. He took the opportunity to force his tongue into my mouth. I fought against him all I could, but he was just too heavy. I did the only thing that I could do in that moment. I clenched my teeth down on his intruding tongue. He cried out in pain as he sat up quickly, still straddling my hips. I said, "Stop, Jason." I yelled at him. He glared down at me, not saying a word. I tried to get up, but he held me down by my shoulders. He slapped me hard across my face, making my head snap to one side. My heart seemed to skip one beat in that moment. Jason just slapped me. The good guy in the midst of these lunatics. My good guy. Just slapped me. Nobody, he said menacingly, says no to me. He held my arms down and kissed me forcefully. I kept my lips pressed in a tight line. He began to kiss my neck again, going lower and lower. He kissed a trail down my chest and traced little circles with his tongue at the edge of my bra. "Get off of me. Help." I yelled as loud as I could. No one came. He began to kiss down my stomach, shifting his whole body down as he did so. He still kept a firm hold on my wrists, but he moved his legs down from encasing my waist to encasing my knees. That was all I needed. I jerked one knee up into his crotch. He moaned loudly and fell sideways off of me. I wasted no time in jumping up and running from the tent. I headed straight to the forest, not caring what direction I was heading. I ran as fast as I could through the trees. I began to hear noises behind me, like people calling to each other. In my haste, I couldn't hear what they were saying. I looked behind me and saw at least 7 men running after me. I picked up my speed and was now all but a blur to all around me. But unfortunately, the men were just as fast, if not faster, than I was. I contemplated taking off into the sky, but the trees were too crowded. I would never be able to take off from here. One of the men got hold of me. I just kicked him hard in the ribs and kept running. 3 more tackled me and I fought with all my might against them. One held my hands behind my back while another one slapped handcuffs on them. It took all of them to restrain me as they got me up off the ground. I was struggling against them when Danny walked in and stood in front of me. My eyes grew wide in horror when I saw Jason close behind him. The face I had trusted for the past 54 days, the face that had just assaulted and betrayed me, stared at me with mocking eyes. I thought we had an understanding. "Maddie, no running. You'll have to be punished," said Danny in mock disappointment. "No, Danny, you don't understand. Jason, we were he tried to rape me," I yelled. "And this should matter to me because..." My mouth dropped in shock. He acted as if it didn't matter. As if Jason assaulting me was no big deal. Because he assaulted me. He held me down and tried to. I was cut off by Danny holding his hand up for silence. "The only one in the wrong here is you. You attacked a superior. Twice." He gestured over to the man I had kicked. He was still doubled over on the ground. "Attacked." I screamed. "It was self-defense." "Yes, attacked. He is your superior. 3rd in charge, to be exact. There is no self-defense against him." He smiled his arrogant smirk and my heart sank. "Take her to the whipping post." He addressed the men restraining me. They began to push and pull me back toward camp. "No," I yelled. No, please." "Jason. Danny, please." It was of no use. My captors forced me back to camp, me struggling all the way. They led me to a long wooden pole that had a chain hanging from the top. They handcuffed my hands in front of me and attached them to the chain so that they were starched above my head. They chained my feet to the pole as well so I couldn't turn around. I struggled against my bonds, but I couldn't break them. I could turn my head just enough to see some of what was going on behind me. I saw Danny, Jason, and Gage all walk toward me in formation, Danny leading. Jason walked up to me and put his hands on my sides. He slid his hands up and down my ribs before he wrapped them around my waist and whispered in my ear, "No one says no to me." He then tied something around my mouth so it pulled my cheeks back painfully. Best of luck. He looked. So what do you think? 10 lashes. I had Jason call to Danny as he walked away. 10 should give her the message. Agreed Danny. I could hear a whip crack in the air. Let's get started, shall we? I braced myself for the pain, thinking I've endured 3 years of my father. This can't be much worse than that. Right. Wrong. The whip snapped against my back like hot iron, ripping a long stinging slash in my flesh. My knees buckled in pain as I cried out against the gag in my mouth. My wrists were yanked up by the chains as my legs could no longer support my weight. The cold metal dug into my wrists, causing warm, sticky liquid to ooze down my arms and join the blood seeping from the wound in my back. I heard Danny call. I felt the sting of the whip again as it slashed across my shoulder blade. My back arched as a tear fell from my eye too. The whip dug into my skin, criss-crossing the other cuts, making it just that more painful. That's Brady, my fated mate. Light splashed around me and my room spun with the beat of the heavy techno music the DJ was playing. I screamed in pain and begged him to stop, but the negotiations came out mumbled thanks to the cloth that was pulled against my cheeks like a horse's bit. That's Brady, my fated mate. Lights flashed around me and my wounds spun with the beat of the heavy techno music the DJ was playing. 5. My vision was blurring. Little black spots were darting around like an old video game. The dust began to grow and grow, blocking out my sight. I went completely limp, my shoulders wrenching from the chain being pulled taut. My heart was clenching in hurt. Betrayal. I trusted Jason. Maybe, was beginning to fall for him. And now these men, Danny, Jason, the men I had begun to trust, were ruthless, heartless, soulless. They could do whatever they wanted to me and no one could stop them. They would feel no remorse, they wouldn't feel anything at all. They owned me. I was helpless. I couldn't do a thing to them, no matter what powerful being I was. They could kill me if they wanted and have no repercussions. They would just go on with their normal lives. They could do anything. No one could stop them. They owned me. I had no choice. These were the last thoughts that ran through my head before the dots had completely blacked out my vision and my brain shut down, piece by piece, as it tried to stop the pain. And not just the pain of the whip slicing my back. Blow after blow after blow. To all you Jason fans out there, turns over a table and hides behind its Ari. Dodges the items flying towards me, please don't hate me. The story had to go a certain way and I needed something to make it go down the path it's going on, and this was the best way. Sorry. And to those of you who are thinking why is it that every guy she meets is a complete and utter ass? Can't she ever get a break? Well, yes. So far all the guys she's met are absolutely horrible, but just wait, I've still got some tricks up my sleeve. Till next time. Alex Werewolf Forest, Chapter 10. So much time had passed. Exactly how long I didn't know. I had stopped counting the days a long time ago. All I knew was that summer had turned into fall. To winter. To spring. The passing of days meant nothing to me anymore. I was numb. I was dead. My heart still pumped blood through my veins and air still passed through my lungs, but it was like my soul had been ripped out. I was just a body, empty, devoid of all emotion. I just didn't care anymore. In the beginning, I was back in my tent with chains around my wrists and a collar around my neck. There were 2 guards with me at all times. Slowly, as they began to see my compliance, the restrictions were taken off. Again, I was allowed to walk the camp freely. That's Spidey, my fated mate. Lights flashed around me and my wings spun with the beat of the heavy techno music the DJ was playing. I rarely exercised that freedom. I would sometimes see Jason around the camp. He would just flash me a knowing smirk. He came too. Visit me in my tent a few times. to finish what he started. I won't get into details with that. I fought at first, but there was no point. There was nothing I could do. It was like I was lost in an ever-ending nightmare. Nothing ever got better. It only got worse. That flame of hope that had once burned clear and true in my heart was now firmly and irrevocably extinguished. My life was in a horrid, painful rut, and there was nothing I could do about it. I was sitting in my tent when I heard someone yell outside. "Everyone, get ready to head out. The mutts are planning an attack." Everybody began to run around in no understandable order. After much chaos, the entire camp had shifted and was now standing in perfect rows. Danny, Gage, and Jason stood in front of the pack of hairy beasts with their hands behind their backs. "Our informant has notified us of an impending attack," said Danny. "They will come from the north. They were planning on taking us by surprise here at our camp." He snickered at this. "We will intercept them and take them down. Don't hesitate to kill." Gage ran into my tent and grabbed my arm, wrenching me to my feet. "We're going to be fighting today. Key up for real this time. You will fight and you will obey every order, or there will be consequences." He grinned heavily at me. "Yes, sir," I replied in a dead tone. "Good. You'll be in my team." "Let's go." He dragged me out of the tent. "Get into your teams," ordered Danny. "Gage's team will take them from the west. Jason from the east. Me and my team will meet them head-on." "Move out." Everyone that wasn't already in their wolf forms phased and ran off after their designated leaders. "You better not screw this up," Gage growled at me. I nodded my head and followed him into the forest. Gage stopped and crouched low. He swished his reddish-brown tail in the signal for us to do the same. We laid and waited in silence. I felt the paws pounding against the ground before I saw the large pack of wolves running through the trees. We hid in the brush as the feet of the wolf pack passed us in a blur. At a sharp bark from Danny, Gage sprung and landed on the back of one of the wolves, digging his talon-like claws deep into the wolf's skin. We could hear the surprised whine as the wolf was thrown onto the ground. The rest of the team sprung as well, landing on the closest victim. I followed their example and jumped into the frenzy. Finding the closet wolf that didn't smell like us, I attacked. I leapt onto his back and grabbed into the scruff of his neck. He whipped and whirled, but I held on tight. He flipped onto his back, crushing me under him. My hold weakened as the breath was knocked out of my lungs, and he took the opportunity to pin me down. His paws restrained my shoulders as his snarling jaws remained hesitantly suspended over my throat. His reluctance to kill was apparent, but I wasn't about to give him the time to change his mind. I rolled sideways, throwing him off balance. Pain shot through me as his claw ripped through my ear. A few trickles of blood rolled down my face and across my muzzle. I lunged forward and grabbed his leg in my teeth, mixing his blood with the blood still flowing from my ear. His teeth slashed at my neck, but I ignored the pain and bit harder, feeling my teeth meet the bone. He cried out in pain and tried to pull away. I let go and watched him run into the forest, hobbling on his injured leg. My entire body was throbbing in pain. My lungs felt as if the air had been sucked out of me with a shot, but you see. I tried to take deep, steady breaths, praying I wouldn't pass out. Just as I began to recover, something barreled into my back, throwing me to the ground. I bucked, making the wolf tumble off of me. My pain was all but forgotten as I stood to face him. The white, now blood-stained fur on my back stood straight up as I snarled at my enemy. He whipped around and faced me, his jowls in the same fearsome expression as mine. I stared into his eyes, preparing for his next attack. Wait a second. I know those eyes. I recognized their emerald green that now shimmered with determination. I recognized the deep cerulean blue fleck that made his eyes look faceted, like gems. They were the eyes I would always go to when I was upset or hurt. They were the eyes I looked to for guidance. They were the eyes that I had known and trusted for so many years. They were the eyes I thought I had lost forever, and now those eyes were right in front of me. I knew those eyes, but it was impossible. It couldn't be. Werewolf Forest, Chapter 11. I shifted back into my human form, still staring at his eyes. When he saw my face, he faltered, his eyes widening in shock. He shifted back as well, and my suspicions were confirmed. He stood there, arms hanging limply by his sides, staring at me in confusion. Maggie. He breathed. Andrew. It was him. It was really him. Maggie. He stared at me in disbelief. What are you doing here? I could ask you the same thing. I mean, you were. I thought you were. I shook my head in shock. He had changed in the last year. Well, however long it had been now. His dark brown hair that used to be cropped short was now hanging his eyes. His gangly 15-year-old muscles had turned into a sculpted body built for a 20-year-old man. I could see every chiseled feature on his bare chest. He was taller, now at least 6 feet. His face had lost its boyish roundness. If it weren't for his eyes, I might have not recognized him. Andrew. I ran to him and embraced my brother in all but blood in a long, awaited hug. He stiffened at first before he wrapped his arms around me. He grabbed the back of my head and held me close. Tears began to flow down my cheeks. I thought I would never see you again, I sobbed. Maggie. He pulled away from me so he could look at my face. I don't understand. Why are you here? They told me to come. It was the only answer I had. He looked around us, his face worried. Get down. He pulled me to the ground so we were lying on our stomachs beside each other. The forest floor was riddled with injured wolves. Some were bleeding. Some had limbs bent in odd, unnatural positions. Some had bones sticking out of their fur. It was horrifying. I saw Gage standing over an unmoving body. Head back to camp. He yelled to his remaining team members. Leave the wounded. Our work here is done. He laughed. The wolves gathered around him and he looked at them in confusion. Has anyone seen Maggie? They all looked around at their comrades and shook their heads. The pup must have gotten scared and ran back to camp. Well, she'll see what happens to deserters when we get back. He chuckled. Let's move out. We waited for the group to disappear before we moved. He grabbed my hand and helped me up. Everyone who can walk group up and we'll head back to camp. He yelled to the injured wolves. If you're badly injured, head home. Stay in groups. Those of you who can't, phase back and hang tight. A team will be here soon to get you home. A few of the many wolves stood up on shaky legs and began to head back the way they came while some of the least injured walked towards us. Some struggled to get up but ended up collapsing to the ground and shifting back to their human forms. I tried not to look at their broken bodies as the ones who could walk gathered around Andrew. I instinctively hid behind his back. One of the men approaching looked at me curiously. Who's she? He asked. He walked with authority. Probably the alpha. He held his head high, though his blonde hair was painted with his own blood and so many members of his pack lay, defeated, on the ground. His eyes were a warm brown, kind. He looked like a just leader, like the kind that actually cared about his pack. That anxiety, my fated mate. Lights flashed around me and my wheels spun with the beat of the heavy techno music the DJ was playing. Obviously, I wasn't a great judge of character. I stared at his face curiously. There was something familiar about him. A friend, answered Andrew. The man stepped closer to me and sniffed the air. She smells like them. Why are you protecting the enemy? He looked at Andrew sternly. She's not the enemy. Cut her. We can't rust her. He grabbed my hand and pulled me out from hiding. He gave my hand a comforting squeeze. Are you sure? The man, Connor, asked skeptically. Absolutely. Connor sighed. All right, bring her to camp, but keep an eye on her. Emmer nodded his head. All right. He turned to the rest of the people and pointed to two of the least injured. You to stay here, just in case they come back. I'll send a team to help get the injured back to camp. And two, bury the dead. He dipped his head in sadness. Without saying another word, he turned and ran in the opposite direction that Gage had with us all following. I was in yet another Camp Joy. This one was smaller than Annie's main camp, but bigger than James's. It was much too small to house the pack that we had attacked, so it was more than likely a temporary camp. Andrew had sat me on a log by a fire pit and told me to stay put while he got some bandages for my ear. It had stopped bleeding but still had a huge rip in it. I jumped when someone put their hand on my shoulder. It's just me, Mags, Andrew said as he knelt beside me. My ear burned as he pressed an alcohol wipe to my wound. It stung, but I ignored the pain. I'd had worse. He attached some white sticky bandages to hold my ear together. When he was finished, he placed his hand on my cheek and tilted my head towards his. His eyes bore into mine, scrutinizing the utter emptiness that now filled them. What did they do to you? Max Spidey. My hated Nate. White slashed around me and my wounds spun with the beat of the heavy techno music the DJ was playing. I just looked down at my knees again, not wanting to answer. The soft pit-pat of bare feet hitting the dirt advanced across the ground. I looked up to see Connor with a paper plate extended towards me. I lightened at the sight of a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. I took a bite, enjoying the feeling of something other than raw meat slide down my throat for the first time in what seemed like forever. I thought you might be hungry, he said. I didn't answer and quickly finished off my sandwich. Thank you, I mumbled after I had swallowed. Not a problem. So Maggie, I need to know what happened. How did you get involved with Danny and his pack? I looked down at my feet. He sighed when he saw I wasn't going to answer. When she feels like talking, bring her to my tent. We'll sleep here tonight. Let the pack rest, and head home in the morning. He stood and walked off. Andrew put a comforting hand on my shoulder. You need to tell us what happened. It could be very important. I slowly shook my head, dreading bringing up the haunting memories. I mumbled, my voice cracking. Hey, he grabbed my hand in both of his. I'll be right here. I won't leave your side even for a minute. But we need to know what happened. I bit my lip, but nodded. Come on. He helped me up and took me to one of the few tents. Like the tents back in Daddy's camp. They were normal, commercial ones. Down sleeping bags covered the tent's floor. It was the spitting image of a family camping trip. He'll be here in a sec, Andrew assured me. Just then Connor walked through the nylon flaps. He zipped the tent behind him before sitting in front of us. All right, Maggie. Let's start from the beginning. He looked at me expectantly. My eyes drifted to my feet, still not wanting to talk. I felt a squeeze on my hand that Andrew was still holding. I'm right here, he whispered. I nodded and raised my head to look Connor in the eye. I was walking in the forest one night. I told Connor and Andrew everything. Well, not everything. Everything. I left out a few. Unneeded details. More specifically, Jason. They didn't need to know everything he had done to me. I just told them he sold me out when I tried to run. They seemed to buy it. I ran through every event I could remember. Seeing the wolf boy, being kidnapped, my first shift, the ill-conceived plan to get them to trust me, finding out I was an Amoveo, their eyes widened at the training with James. Anything else that could be important. By the time I was finished, I was getting looks of pity from them both. Well, that's quite a story, Maggie, said Connor. Andrew, she can sleep in your tent tonight. We'll take her home with us tomorrow. Henry nodded and pulled me out of the tent. He embraced me in a tight hug. I'm so sorry, Maggie, So sorry. I patted his back. It wasn't your fault, Andrew. He stepped back, still holding on to my shoulders. I know, but just sorry you had to go through all that. I mean, first your dad, then this. He shook his head. Come on. Let's get you some sleep. You look exhausted. I nodded and let him lead me to a tent much like the one we had just left. The tent was empty except for the same covering of sleeping bags. You can take that one. He pointed to a green and black sleeping bag in the corner. I laid on it without question and hugged my knees to my chest. He laid on the one beside me and placed a hand on my shoulder. Get some sleep, Mags. I obeyed and drifted into a disturbed, restless sleep. TSK, Maggie. I thought we had an understanding. No running. Danny wagged his finger at me. I wasn't thinking. I'm sorry. I promise I won't do it again. I screamed in fear. Now, how can I take your word for that? He grabbed my arm, squeezing it painfully. Oh, stop. I won't do it again. I swear. Maggie. I heard Andrew's voice sound behind me. Run, Andrew, run. He acted as if he couldn't hear me and ran towards Danny. Get your hands off of her. He yelled. Danny dropped his hold on my arm and spun at Andrew. I tried to help, but Jason held me back. You're mine now, he said menacingly as he ran his lips along my shoulder. Get off, Andrew. I struggled against Jason, watching in horror as Danny stood with Andrew's neck in a chokehold. Danny swiftly jerked his arm sideways and my stomach dropped as I heard the sickening snap of Andrew's neck breaking. No, Andrew. Danny let Andrew's limp body drop to the ground. A horrible smile grew across his face. You're ours now, Danny and Jason said in unison. My eyes never left Andrew's lifeless body as I was dragged away into the dark forest. I woke up in a cold sweat, my heart beating a mile a minute. I grabbed my chest and tried to force some oxygen into my aching lungs. Andrew, I yelled. He woke with a start beside me. That's Spidey, my fated mate. White splashed around me and the wind spun with the beat of the heavy techno music the DJ was playing. That's Spidey, my fated mate. White splashed around me and the wind spun with the beat of the heavy techno music the DJ was playing. He said when I saw his face I broke into sobs. It's okay. I'm here. He soothed, embracing me. Jesus, Andrew. Someone else yelled. I looked around the tent, noticing at least 4 other people had woken up. I'm trying to sleep here. Sorry, he said as he led me out of the tent. I wrapped my arms around him as sobs ripped through my chest. It's okay. They're coming from me. They're going to find me. Bark, Spidey, my fated mate. Lights flashed around me and the wind spun with the beat of the heavy techno music the DJ was playing. Bark, Spidey, my fated mate. Lights flashed around me and the wind spun with the beat of the heavy techno music the DJ was playing. Going. Two. Chill. I choked out. Shit, that's okay. I'm here. I won't let them hurt you. No one is going to hurt you. We stood under the moonlight for God knows how long. Me in his arms, crying my eyes out. Come on, let's go back to sleep. No, I don't want to sleep. Want me to stay up with you? I nodded my head into his chest. He sighed and pulled me over to the logs I had sat on before. His strong arms embraced me as he held me in his lap. The flow of tears had stopped now, but I kept my hold on Andrew, still reassuring myself he was really all right. I needed to think about something else, so I blurted out. What happened to you? Why did you disappear? I couldn't keep the hurt from coding every word. I'm so sorry, Maggie, to just leave you like that. I just didn't want to get you involved. But obviously that didn't work out so well. He shook his head in disappointment. I told you my story. Tell me yours, I urged, sliding out of his lap. That's Spidey, my fated mate. White slashed away at me and my wounds spun with the beat of the heady techno music the DJ was playing. My parents were out of town. As usual, I couldn't sleep, so I decided to go for a little walk. Something jumped me from behind and bit me. I passed out, and when I woke up, Connor was with me. He told me what happened to what I was. He gave me the choice of staying with them or going my own way. I decided to stay. But first I went to Kyle and the guys. I told them about everything. They all wanted to join. A lot of them had the gene and were turned, and those who didn't just went home, I guess. Where are they now? Well, Kyle and the majority of them are in other branches of this pack. Tanner, Jared, Brennan, and I stay here. I'm the only one left. He looked down in sadness. I nodded, knowing what he meant. I remembered Tanner and his jokes that never seemed to stop. Jared and the serious guard he always had that could only be broken by those closest to him. Brennan and his afro we would always tease him about. He never really got mad. He knew we loved him. They were like older brothers to me. They all were. I had gotten used to the idea that I would never see any of the freedom fighters again, so this only confirmed it. I still felt that ache in my heart. It just wasn't as painful as it would have been if I had just found out. I didn't allow myself to entertain the thought that I would be able to see the rest of them again. For all I knew, they were dead too. But there's something I don't get. They had a purpose back home. They helped people. Why would they give that up to come here? They thought our cause was a more pressing matter. Wait, what? Cause? What cause? He looked at me like I asked the stupidest question in the world. To keep the human race from being exterminated. Thank you all for joining me in the wild world of Wild Werewolf. I hope you had an amazing time. Don't forget to subscribe, leave your comments and likes, and come back for more wild adventures. See you next time.